somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. Land that I heard of, oh, once in a lullaby. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue and the dreams that you dare to dream, they really do come true. Someday I wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Oh, where troubles melt like lemon drops way above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly and birds fly over the rainbow. Oh, 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 why then, oh, why shouldn't I? You know, someday I wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops way above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. I believe skies are blue and the dreams that you dare to dream really do, they really do come true. Oh, if happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I?
morning. What a beautiful morning we have here in Western North Carolina. Thank you for joining us again here at Unity of the Blue Ridge. I'm here with you, many of you here in spirit, your pictures in our chapel, and those others of you that are joining in whenever you can. So I want to thank you for being here this beautiful day. We have been taking the opportunity to light a candle together. If you have a candle at home and want to do that, I light this candle now, which allows us to always just take the opportunity to remember that wherever we are, our light is shining. And the thing I love about a candle and fire is that even though you can extinguish one particular flame, you don't extinguish fire itself. And so it is with the life of us and the light of us, that it's always there, emerging again and again and again. Would you join me in an opening prayer this morning? As we turn together within, we do so in that spirit of beauty of a new day. Today, creation sings of color and song and sound and light, an interplay of that which is seen and that which is unseen. And so as we join together from our individual places, we recognize the power and the miraculous experience that happens when we come together in intention. We join together this day in the intention of being blessed, that we may be a blessing. And so we give thanks in the name and the nature of all that is holy. Thank you, God, and so it is. Amen. I want to thank you again for being here today. I want to thank Donna Bricky, who's here with me doing this video stuff. She's been working really hard behind the scenes, and Tia, who's helping out on sound. So the three of us send our love and blessings to you. Today we're going to be talking about God beneath our feet. It's an interesting thing to ponder, God beneath my feet. And in particular, what it means when we recognize that we have an individual impact in our world, that we live in an interconnected world, and when we recognize that all of life is sacred. We're going to look at those things and what the power of pause has to do with that. And so before I jump into the message, I would like to just share a little bit. A couple of our members, Pat and Laura Cardwell, sent a video greeting to you, and then we've got an amazing song that was previously recorded by Rhoda Weaver. So enjoy this from Pat and Laura Cardwell.
Darlene and Unity of the Blue Ridge and all of our friends and loved ones, we have a little gift for you. Yeah?
Ready?
Ready. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. We love you.
We love you.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother, I say, brother, help me please. He winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Whoa! There have been times that I thought I couldn't last for long. Now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. And it's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
Wow, Rhoda Weaver, there, that voice. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is going to come. This past week, we experienced Earth Day, and the message that I was inspired, the idea that I've been inspired to talk about is God beneath my feet. You know, when we think about Earth Day, perhaps you, like me, I think about reduce, reuse, recycle, and we absolutely, that message hopefully is everywhere. I know it's not, but there's no reason that it's not truly. And that's a part, hopefully, of all of our lives. And what I want to look at today is what is behind that? What are the mindsets? What are the states of being that allow us to recognize God in all creation and therefore to be the stewards of this earth that we were created to be? I want to begin with a story that comes from the Native American tradition. It's about a Native American elder who every spring the elder would take on a new apprentice. And so at sunrise on the equinox, the elder would gather all of the youth who were of age. And as the sun emerged, the elder would bless the new day. And then he said, "Today I have one task for you. Find that which is sacred and bring it back to me." And when the elder finished speaking, the youth took off running, really just trying to outrun each other to see who could find something sacred and bring it back. But there was one exception. One young girl just simply bent down and she stood up with grass. And she walked over and she handed the grass to the Native American elder. He looked at her and he smiled. He walked over and he put his hands on both of her shoulders and he said, "Well done." And he said, only when you can recognize God beneath your feet are you ready to embody the power that creates heaven on earth. Only when you recognize God beneath your feet, God to the left, God to the right, God above, below, God within and without, God within you and you and you. That when we recognize this, we are truly ready to embody and to own, to actualize the power that creates heaven on earth. So I guess our question this week is, are we recognizing God beneath our feet? And are we ready to embody the fullness of this power that creates heaven on earth? You know, it's a great opportunity to remember that this beautiful earth is not just a giant dead rock that we're inhabiting, that it's a living organism, and that the earth is sacred. And I like to say that we're all a chip off the original source block, that each and every one of us are expressions of this one life. And so today we want to talk about how as individuals we have individual impact, how we live in an interconnected world, and how we are all part of the sacredness of life. Could you unplug that? How we each and every one have individual impact, live in an so much about me as it is about protecting other people, that we are willing to do the things to protect one another when we really consider our interconnection that we have with each other. And that's the core of all of Jesus' teaching. It's the core of all sacred teachings, that be mindful of our individual impact, to know and notice the interconnectedness of all of life, and then the sacredness of all being, of all life. There's a powerful writer, her name is Diana Butler Bass. And in her book, Grounded, when I was thinking this week about God beneath your feet, I want to share with you a passage from Diana's book, Grounded. She said, not so long ago, believers confidently asserted that we occupied a three-tiered universe. There was heaven above, where God lived. There was the world below, where we lived, and there was the underworld, where we fear we might go after death. She writes, what mediated between those three spaces was the church, which acted as kind of a holy elevator. However, that view of the universe and our place in it no longer holds for many Christians or many spiritual believers. The world, not heaven, is the sacred stage of our times, Butler Bass writes. Now we live in a theologically flattened world. Heaven is not above and hell is not below, but they are right here, right now. God is no longer distant, and as a result, we have developed a theological intimacy with the world. That God can be found in the seashore, in the sunset. God can be found in the gardens that we plant at home. God is found at home and at work, in the games that we watch or play, in the stories that entertain us, in our foods, in the company we keep. That God is found in all of these things. Well, perhaps like you, I was schooled in that vertical theology of God and humans and devil and hell below. And it's taken me many years to begin to understand a more holistic concept. That, as Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is here and now, and the consequences of our actions and realizing our individual impact, this whole interconnected world and the sacredness of all life. When I think about this kind of vertical God and the church being the holy elevator, and perhaps that's part of why we're not only homeschooling, we're home churching. And is that even though we know that wherever we are, God is, this is a whole nother opportunity to experience that wherever we are is our sanctuary. We are a sanctuary. Each and every individual is a holy, holy sanctuary. When I was thinking about what Diana wrote about God being that holy elevator, I was reminded of one of the times I was flying. When I travel and I fly on an airplane, I prefer to read or just be quiet. I am an introvert, and that's how I recharge. But as typically happens, I wind up sitting beside somebody who wants to talk. And I remember one flight in particular, I was beside a young guy who was wanting to talk. And then he asked that question. He says, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a minister." And he said, "Okay, well, you're probably not going to want to talk to me because I don't believe in God." And I could tell he wanted to talk, really. And what bubbled up in my mind, I turned to him and I said, "Well, tell me about the God you don't believe in." And he looked at me and he smiled, and he began to talk about that God as she described, that vertical God. He talked about he didn't believe in a God that was in holy isolation. He didn't believe in the God of a chosen few, a God that left most people out as miserable sinners, a God in whom his eyes he would never measure up. He didn't believe in that God. And it gave me great pleasure to say, I don't believe in that God either. And as we really began to talk about our concepts and how even that word God is narrowing, and because I'm angry at the church or God, rather it has happened because I was moving around in the world and began to realize how beautifully God is everywhere. It makes me think of that song, "Everything is Holy Now." She writes how God is in nature and in my neighbor. God is in the stars and in my roots. She said it took me 5 decades to figure it out, but I finally did. And so the church is not the only sacred space. The world is profoundly sacred as well. And thus I fell into a gap, the theological ravine between the church still proclaiming conventional theism in its 3-tiered universe and the spiritual revolution of God with us, God within us. I believe that we're in a great time and a great opportunity to really experience God with us and God within us. And so I want to look at this today, of just like the young girl who held up the grass and said, "This is sacred, this is God." What are some of the things we can do to bring mindfulness to our capacity to have an individual impact? What are some of the things that we can do to help us recognize this interconnected world in which we live and the sacredness, the holy, this divine spark that is within us and with all creation? The first thing, one of the most powerful things that we can do is pause. P-A-U-S-E, pause. And I want to use that word today, sort of a play on that word, as a bit of an acronym, but you'll see in just a minute how we want to use it. But when we look at pause, the first P is pause. The power of pause. How many of you have ever sent a text or an email, and right after you did it, you thought, "Oh my God, if only I had paused before I did that," and sent something, that we realize that life is just this perpetual streaming of stimulus and response and stimulus and response and stimulus and response. But you know, Jesus and the great teachers took time apart. A powerful scripture, "Be still and know." It's as if the universe is giving us collectively, many of us, a time to pause. Nature is rebounding in beautiful ways because of our collective pause. There's something very powerful when we pause. The great pianist Arthur Rubinstein was asked, "How do you handle the notes as well as you do?" And he passionately responded, "I handle the notes no better than any other." But the pauses. The power of the pause is where the art resides. Likewise, I believe the power of the pause is where our true heart, that wholehearted being, resides. I read a story recently heard from NPR about trauma workers at the University of Virginia working in the emergency room. And they described that how over time when you work in trauma, you work in the emergency room, that you see so many people die that you really sort of become callous to it, and it's almost like we've done everything we can do, check, next. They felt automated. And in this NPR story, they told about one time where the team was with an individual who died, and one of the nurses stayed. And in that particular moment, the nurse just bowed her head, paused for a few moments, and said a quiet prayer. Well, she was surprised that the next time she was with her trauma team and a patient died, when she paused, the whole team, every single member paused with her. And they interviewed those afterward, and each one reported feeling touched and feeling a sense of connection to that individual that they had not felt up until that moment. The power of their pause. That story from NPR went on to say that that practice spread throughout that hospital in Virginia, but now it has spread throughout many hospitals where it has become a common practice to pause together. That with this, what was going on, the reactivity in the brains. And he would say, excuse me, I'm sorry I have to stop, but we have a problem with the equipment. And he would have the assistants unattach them and send them to different rooms. And he waited 15 minutes. Now, the equipment didn't really break down. This was just a part of what he was doing. But what happened is after 15 minutes, when they came back and rewired their brains, it was a completely different scenario. That science has proven what the spiritual masters knew, that when we go apart for a while, when we take that sacred pause, to feel the sacred ground beneath our feet, to feel the sacred beat within our heart, that it's in that pause we begin to claim our greater potential. So how may you cultivate the power of pause? That's the P. The A of pause then is our attention. And you can do this anytime because it's going on internally when you pause and you take those deep breaths to begin to then ask yourself, well, where is my attention? What's my mind state right now? What's going on? And am I caught up in this perpetual cycle of stimulus and response and stimulus and response? But where is my attention? There was a study from the University of Michigan. They compiled the findings of 72 different studies that were tracking empathy in college students. And what this very comprehensive study was revealing is that over the past 15 years, there has been a 40% decline in empathy in college students. And the main reason they found that they attributed to this was today in our culture, when a group of college students get together, at least a few of them are multitasking and are also texting, and their attention is on their phone as well. It's the same with families. It's the same with almost all of us. And what happens is that your attention is then scattered. You stay at the surface rather than going deep and connected, which is where vulnerability and intimacy is really born, that it takes those deeper connections, the ability to move beyond the surface. So when we pause, the next thing is to notice, where is my attention? Am I fighting? Am I building my defense case here? Am I running ahead? Am I grasping? Without judgment, but to take those deep breaths and to notice. There's something very powerful when we begin to notice. One of the greatest Buddhist teachers that I have found is Gil Fronsdale. There's a little book, A Monastery Within, that he has written. And there's a story that he shares in this book that to me really conveys the power of our attention. In the story, he talks about an engineer who was living with a lot of stress in his life, was unhappy, unfulfilled, always just going. and yet empty inside. And so this engineer had made his way to a monastery and was practicing meditation and had a little bit of help, but just was still, empty inside and was lacking in compassion. He wasn't feeling that sort of connection, but had noticed that his attention was always somewhere else, even though he was taking the pauses. And so as Gil writes, he said that after coming for some time, the abbess of this monastery said, okay, for 2 years, I want you to volunteer 10 hours a week at the maternity ward in a local hospital. The hospital needs people to hold babies who are born prematurely. If they don't receive enough physical contact, the babies will not grow healthily. When you have finished with these 2 years, please come back to see me. And so he did that. The man was quite perplexed by the instructions, but because of his trust in this abbess and his failure to find relief anywhere else, he went to the hospital and he volunteered to hold little premature babies. He said, I was surprised at how small and fragile the babies felt. I would hold them ever so carefully and I would meditate. Don't think about what's happening. Rather, that tender warmth that you've discovered, just let yourself be entirely consumed by that tender warmth. The power of the pause, and then to notice our attention. And in the noticing that it's going here and there and everywhere, to bring it back to that sense of connection, that sense of heart, of warmth, that sense of sacredness beneath our feet. Pause, the pause. The A is our attention. P-A-U-S-E, use. Oprah Winfrey said her prayer every morning is, use me. Every person on the face of this earth desires to be of service, to be used. This is a funny story that conveys that point, and I think sometimes comic relief helps the point enter more deeply. The story isn't about it's titled An Italian Tomato Garden. An old Italian man lived alone in the country, and it was spring, and he wanted to dig his tomato garden, as he had done every year. But it was hard work for an aging man to get out and do that, and his only son, Vincent, who had always helped him, was currently in prison. The old man wrote a letter to his son and described his predicament. Dear Vincent, I'm feeling pretty bad because it looks like I won't be able to plant my tomato garden this year. I want to be useful, but I'm getting too old to dig up the garden plot. If only you were here, my troubles would be over. I know you would dig the plot because you want to be useful. Just like the good old days. But oh well, love, Papa. A few days later, he received a letter from his son, and it said, Dear Papa, not for nothing, but do not try to dig up that garden. That's where I buried the bodies. Love, Vinny. Well, at 4 a.m. the next morning, the FBI agents and the local police arrived at the old man's house, and they dug up the entire area. However, they didn't find any bodies. They didn't find anything, so they apologized to the old man, and then they left. At 4 a.m., and then the very same day, that man received another letter from his son, and it said, Dear Papa, go ahead and plant the tomatoes now. That was the best I could do under these circumstances. And I like that comic relief, the story, because Vinny wanted to be useful. We all want to be useful. The pause is about pausing, noticing our attention, and then asking that question, how is my attention enlivening my actions? How is my attention enlivening my actions? When I pause, when I notice, where am I focused? What's my attention? And then how does it enliven our actions? I want to share one final story with you, if you'd give me that song. This comes from Tara Brock. She writes, I love the story of a woman who was spending the evening with her mother, and her mother told her she had cancer. As soon as her mother said that, of course, she felt the sadness and guilt and anger and regret and future tripping like boom, boom, boom. The initial shock was really intense. Then she went into planning mode for her mother. What needs to happen? What are the treatment options? How soon do we get this lump removed? And After pausing, she noticed that she had immediately gone into, oh my God, in control mode. She says, thank God for learning the power of a pause and allowing that pause to take me to my attention, that I may connect. She said, as I began to pause, I was able to do something that I may have missed otherwise. My mother didn't want to talk about any of these things. As I was weighing all these options, whether it was a biopsy, a mastectomy, my mom just sat in a chair in my kitchen staring blankly into her cup of coffee. I was trying to be safe for her sake. I was trying to be strong for her sake and mine, but suddenly it became clear that wasn't what she needed. She was scared, and she needed to be scared. I debated whether to give her a hug, which sounds terrible, I know, but I was barely holding it together. Scurrying around, making dinner and poring over doctor's reports, staying busy was my way of avoiding the total collapse. But being present, pausing and being present, allowed me to shift. And so I took a deep breath and I walked across the room and I wrapped my arm around her. It was an awkward sideways hug, but it was also a long, necessary one. And then something happened. Slowly, she started rocking side to side like a mother rocks a child. Except now the child was the caretaker. It was a sweet, tiny moment I'll never forget, and one that I would have surely missed were it not for the power of taking that pause, of noticing what I was noticing, where was my attention, and then saying, how can I be of use right now? How can I be of use? How can my presence and my attention enliven my actions? This week, as we talk about standing on holy ground, it's an opportunity to pause, to notice our attention, to take that deep breath. How can I be used in a way that I would like to be of service? Martha Postlewhite writes, don't try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forests of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is your life falls into your own cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world that is so worthy of rescue. May we pause. May we notice our attention. And may we seek to be of use, all the while standing on holy ground with God beneath our feet. I invite you to close your eyes, to pause. When we close our eyes and pause, it's not as if the sand in the hourglass immediately settles and everything is beautifully still. But rather, when we pause, and especially when we close our eyes and pause, it's as if we can see behind the scenes. As if you remember you're seated watching the play of life and reconnecting with that powerful witness that is the one who can watch it and bear witness to our thoughts, to our attitudes, to our actions, to where is my attention. And in creating that pause, through the power of that awareness, something begins to emerge. It's pure beingness. And now use me. Use me to see what I need to see. Use me to be what I am created to be. Use me and guide me in right action. We give thanks for this beautiful day, for the power of pause. For noticing what we notice. For attending to our attention. And for how we are being of use. That we are the place where God lives and moves and has its being. That we are the place where God shows up. And so as we bring our awareness back, I invite you to smile. If you're sitting with some other folks, just smile at them right now. Give them a big smile. If you're by yourself, just smile. If you're with your cat, smile at your cat, smile at your dog, smile at your trees, just smile. And as Thich Nhat Hanh says, smile until you feel your liver smile, that you feel everything within you smile. This week, may you practice the power of pause. Noticing your attention. And being mindful of how we are used and being of use. So I want to thank each and every one of you for joining in this day, whenever you choose to join in with us. I also want to thank you. Many more of you are writing letters and sending cards. One this week said, what a crazy world we're living in right now. I'm sending my tithe to Unity in this time in hopes that every little bit helps keeps the light on. And I'm always there in spirit. Well, we appreciate when you send and let us know how things are going for you. I also want to extend my personal thank you for your continued support during this very unusual time. And so we ask again, whether it's $5 or $50 or whatever it is that's yours to give, it is helping keep the lights on and things are doing well, and I want to thank you for that. One final thing that I'm happy to share, those of you that are, we had planned some time ago this was Earth Day celebration Sunday, and so we ordered a bunch of a bunch of organic, non-GMO seeds that are good for butterflies and bees. They're pollinators. And these little envelopes, and our youth were going to be putting some seeds in the envelopes and handing out to those of you that were going to be here today. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to be sending out a mailing, And if we have your information, we'll send you a little packet of seeds. And we ask that when you plant these little pollinator wildflower seeds, that you do so creating beauty and knowing that you are creating and adding beauty. You are being of use in that way wherever you are. So we want to thank you for that. Two things as we close out our service. We have an announcement by our board president, Ellen Winter, with her amazing 3 donkeys, and then a song by Kat Williams in our band. So thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm Ellen Winter, and today I'm here with Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist, Princess Leia, and Ashley Judd. And I'm going to read briefly from The Wisdom of Donkeys by Andy Merrifield. It's a treatise on finding tranquility in a chaotic world. There's something amazing about watching donkeys graze in the middle of nowhere. It's a kind of therapy, even a sort of meditation. You can both lose and find yourself. An Australian proverb says that when you watch donkeys in a meadow, don't forget your chair. You can observe them for hours on end. It's addictive and hypnotic. It's hard to drag yourself away once you're smitten. All you hear is a faint rustle as they shuffle through the grass and bury their heads in the earth, chomping away. I hope that this week you find your place of peace and knowing, and that part of that knowing is that even in our separateness, we are all together in and with unity. Please remember to click the donate button on the Unity website and contribute your tithes and offerings in gratitude and in support of this wonderful, loving Unity community that supports us every day. Namaste. At home with my donkeys and my dogs and my husband.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Keep moving on.
Keep moving on.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Lift up your eyes.
Lift up your eyes.
Don't you despair.
Don't you despair.
Look up ahead.
Look up ahead.
The path is there.
The path is there.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. I know you're scared.
I know you're scared.
And I'm scared too.
And I'm scared too.
But here I am.
But here I am.
Right next to you.
Right next to you.
You gotta dog, David